out of Brisbane, Queensland, Australia, Damien Beatdown Brown.
What's up, folks? Welcome to the Wireless Podcast. I'm your host, Damien Brown, UFC and Army veteran. I created the Wireless Podcast to cover all things sport, lifestyle, physical and mental health. It's not about me, it's about the listeners. So if you want to see anything or hear anyone in particular on the podcast, please reach out any way you can, shoot me a message or an email and let me know. I can't guarantee it, but I'll do my best to make it happen. Your support is what drives me to produce the best content possible. Follow me on Instagram, Twitter and Facebook at Beatdown155 or subscribe to our YouTube channel, The Wireless Podcast, and get notified first when episodes are live. Nothing is off limits, so tune in and hopefully we can produce some wicked content for you in the near future. And what's up, folks? We're joined today by Townsville's one and only Ian, the Hitman Bone. What's up, man?
D Brown, good to see you, my friend. It's always fun to have a chat.
Always. Your opinions are always fun to listen to. And given the current state of the world, I can't wait to talk to you. So, how's Townsville?
Man, it's pretty good. I mean, we're just sitting up here. I'm actually in the gym. I just finished working out with one of my coaches. I've been hitting pads more in the last 2 months than I have in the last 5 years. It's been fun, but get a chance to be selfish and do my own training.
Yeah, I see on your Instagram and Facebook and that you're hitting pads with the girls a lot, which is obviously probably better. It's good for everyone, right? But those girls are definitely getting sharp, and they would be enjoying the time, the one-on-one time.
Yeah, man, holding pads for your kids is fun. I mean, anyone out there that has their kids doing martial arts and can't get them into a club at the moment, learn how to hold pads. It's not hard and it's super duper fun.
Yeah, so I mean, you didn't have martial arts. When did you find martial arts?
I started training martial arts probably as I was preparing to leave the military. So before I was in the fitness industry and a martial arts coach, I spent 8 years in the military, and that was where we met on your initial employment training, which is always funny because I mean that person I was then, Corporal Bone, is very different to the Coach Bone, the thing that I try and do for people now. But I definitely learned a lot of good lessons from that at the same time. So yeah, man, I suppose 2005. My partner at the time, who's now my wife, we've been happily married for over 10 years now. Once she was pregnant, I kind of decided I needed to get out of the army and change some of my behavior. So that's kind of where I found martial arts, because I always wanted to be a warrior, like the Anzacs and all those things. And when I got out of the military, I didn't want to leave that. So the military wasn't super great at unarmed combat or that kind of training at that point in time. So it was a box that I hadn't ticked yet. So I kind of went down the rabbit hole and went down the rabbit hole real fast. I think I'd maybe even fought once or twice before I got out of the military as well.
Well, I remember the initial employment training that I was doing, and everyone, you were like, when we were all trainees, and everyone knew that you fought. So back then, like, I hadn't even discovered fighting or anything, and everyone's like, "Oh man, he's fighting on that Bad Boys show." It was like that was the Townsville one back in the day, right? Bad Boys.
You know what? I don't think I fought on the Bad Boys one. I did fight in Townsville once, though, for my second or third fight. It was one of those fights that you'll never find on Sherdog, because that was a thing. You used to be able to fight amateur and people not even know about it. So that was Matt Bircher. I fought in Townsville. He was a guy from Sydney. Tough guy. That was fun. It was probably one of the only times I only fought MMA in Townsville once. So there you go. I boxed and kickboxed in Townsville, but only fought MMA once here.
Yeah, cool. Always Classic Townsville, always traveling away, kind of like regional as far as MMA shows go. Opportunities are always out of town. So most guys from Townsville travel, as I did when I was up there. So that's pretty interesting. So do you say that you try to do things slightly different, although you learnt the lessons from the army and that? But how do you go with your teamwork when your team's not working together these days?
Well, I suppose that's a rabbit hole we can go down if you want. So it's about setting standards. So it's definitely something I thought about when I had the club. I mean, my first two coaches were pretty rubbish on the support or structure side of things. So it was something that I kind of developed. I mean, I remember my first fight. So anyone who understands military talk, I wrote it down like a mission. Like I had actions on for every worst case scenario, and made sure after we did classes that I would practice my actions on getting stuck in the bottom in half guard, actions on being mounted, actions on someone being on my back, side control. So we were doing, I was kind of like inadvertently, by training that way, discovered kind of like hold training and sections of training, like actions on having my back against the ropes or back against the cage or pinning someone up against the cage. So I kind of broke down the fight into all these areas, which at the time was fairly revolutionary. Like everybody wasn't training like that back then. There was a few clubs that might have been ahead of the eight ball a little bit. Like, I mean, I'd go away and I'd watch maybe your original team, and they were really good at cage takedowns, but they also made a couple of mistakes because they were so much better. They used to leave their necks out. So I'd watch other teams, and I would try and pick what they were good at and what they were not good at, and take that back and be like, okay, man, everyone's got to be. I've got to have a good cage game. I could win by pressing people up against the cage. Or if that team presses me up against the cage all the time, I need to really attack their necks. I need to do this. So it was a little bit of trial and error, and also I suppose intel gathering as I went along. But now, I mean, everybody's doing hold training. Like if you go to a jiu-jitsu club and you do a technique, and then at the end of that you don't do any hold training or roll in that position, you're probably getting ripped off.
I agree. 100%. Yeah, 100%.
So there's commonality that lots of people doing, and we train our striking a little bit like that too now, where it's like, okay, someone's just going to throw jabs at you for a round. Someone's just going to throw jab cross hook at you for a round, and you're going to use all your counters, all your movement. So we kind of move that breaking down of the training to make some kind of liveness in the drill, where you can practice it. There's a little bit of resistance. There's some footwork, but you get to be a little bit creative and do some problem solving inside that drill too.
Yeah. So that's an awesome way of training. I mean, probably that would have been like 12, 13. Well, I started training 12. That would be like 13, 14 years ago you had that fight. So a lot of people back then wouldn't have been really breaking down technique and looking at video and looking at what other teams did better or well, or what they didn't do good. I mean, it was still, the sport was relatively new. I mean, UFC's been only going for like 2 decades. So it's that would have been something that a lot of people weren't doing.
Yeah, and some people were. Like if you look back, I mean, if you looked back and watched Danny Higgins fights, you'd be like, oh man, that guy would be killing it now. Like he was that good. He was that good then, when even people were getting to UFC level back then, and they weren't as well rounded as they are now. So I mean, it existed, but it wasn't as common as it is now. Like the level's definitely raised a little bit, and I think there's still lessons to be learned that we don't do well. So I mean, at a high level, people like yourselves and other people at that international level, concepts like decentralized training works well, but no one really knows how to do it properly. How do you do decentralized training like GSP did, but still have a coach to go to all the time and still be accountable to someone, because being a Ronin doesn't work. Like if there's something that I've noticed is, like, some of those guys, hit that top level, and sometimes they even get worse, you know?
Yeah.
And they're
Well,
just
they
floating
can't-
around, and they never got better because they don't have that guy saying, "Hey, man, this shit you're doing is bullshit. You need to change it."
Yeah, well, I mean, we've got to be accountable to essentially a head coach. You can have whatever other coaches you want, but there needs to be someone that keeps you accountable, someone that puts you through, you know, the right rounds, the right training, goes over things, says you suck at this, you need to do that. Like we have to have that person. You can't just go off by yourself and do a bit of jiu-jitsu here and kickboxing there and then go into a fight and think you've got it all together. It doesn't. I mean, some people can get away with it, but it doesn't work for a lot of people.
Mm. Yeah, and what are you doing as a fighter too to make your team stronger? You know, like if you want a whole bunch of good training partners, everything else, what are you doing to make your team stronger and build up your training partners? So there has to be some kind of like give and take with that ego to make sure you're not being too selfish as well. So I mean, it's interesting. It's definitely something that you're going to have to think about more. Owning a club, like how you're going to move forward and what standards you're going to set for those types of people, and at what point in time is decentralized training acceptable, and all those kind of things. So it becomes complicated, and obviously different people are going to fit into different clubs. If there's one thing I'm not trying to do, I'm not trying to please everyone. You know, that's not my goal. That's not my goal.
So decentralized training. I get a lot of guys come to the gym. They're like, "Oh, I want to do kickboxing, or I want to do MMA with you guys, but I want to do my jiu-jitsu here." And I mean, me as a coach, like I'm totally fine with that. People will do jiu-jitsu with you anyway, but essentially what they're saying is they don't want to leave their coach, which I get, and I'm totally cool with as a coach. Like if you want to do jiu-jitsu with someone else, that's fine. So yeah, I understand and can appreciate the decentralized training. I think it's pretty cool. And someone said to me a long time ago, this is way before doing MMA in the last decade, but someone said to me that you know, if you limit your ability to one single instructor, teacher, coach, whatever it is, then you limit your growth only to that person's. That doesn't mean like I mean, we could go with the same coach forever and still never learn everything. Do you know what I mean? But
yeah, and I mean I employ
bowl.
extra coaches just because I like that. I like that sounding board for other people, and I like to make sure that everybody doesn't end up a sloppy version of me. Hopefully you're passing on the more underlying concepts and everything else. Because I mean, especially now, like people shouldn't be using. You can't be using your coach as a measuring stick who's 20 years older than you and probably 5 to 10 surgeries down the track. Like it's a silly thing to do.
100%. So speaking of gyms are closed. So obviously we were going to chat last week, but I mean the circumstances haven't really changed. We've got less than a dozen active coronavirus cases in the state. Yet we have pubs, clubs, and bars open, and gyms are still shut. So you've been really vocal on social media and in general about local risk assessments. I totally agree with it. You don't have any cases in Townsville of the coronavirus, COVID-19, yet they can't seem to lock the roads around Townsville and allow the Townsville economy to carry on.
Well, it's not even really about blocking the roads anyway, because there's already travel bans in place. I mean, look, it's interesting. One of the things I've been trying to do was just to be careful that like what freedoms we give away, and to be ready to maybe argue the point or stand up for ourselves if we need to, because this thing could be around for the next couple of years. You know, like there's still never been a vaccine for any coronaviruses, and it's been around since the 60s, I believe, if you actually look at everything that's going on. So we shouldn't be holding our breath waiting for vaccines. Hopefully they come up with a better treatment for people. But at the end of the day, I mean, if you just look at the data, and it's interesting because, I mean, one of the reasons I wasn't really super vocal on my page is I've been trying to stay a little bit positive, but I've been jumping on the Premier's page just to test because I know if I say something, I'll get 10 people to argue with me, right? So I just wanted to test to see what people's reaction was, to see if anybody had like a solid reason. And unfortunately, no one seems to have a solid reason. Apparently, 7 cases in 5 million people over 6,000 kilometers is enough to be frightened of this thing, which I don't think it is. Because not only is it a 7 in 5 million chance that you're going to walk past someone that's infected, and that's how you catch it, right? So if everyone else is asymptomatic, you're probably not going to catch it, very likely anyway, off someone that's asymptomatic. But at the end of that, you've also only like a certain amount of people are going to be hospitalized from that. So there's probably a 95% chance you're not going to be hospitalized for it. And if you are hospitalized for it, like only 0.3%, even if it was 1%, 1% of people hospitalized get really sick and in a critical condition. So when you start saying it like that, you're really looking at a more than 1 in 5 million chance. It's like, fuck, buy a lottery ticket if you're scared of it.
Yeah.
And I believe in everything that we did. We did the right thing. We needed to be cautious, come up with a system to lock people down and everything. I think we've done that. But there needs to be like more zonings, or at least a trust in the travel ban. If there's an 150 kilometer travel ban, then no one from Cairns should be coming to Townsville. So you could separately have different phases for those cities. And right now we've been working off faith for these travel bans anyway. There's no blockades on the roads. Everybody's just been doing the right thing. So when someone says, well, how do you manage that? Well, they're not managing it now.
No, yeah, totally. I mean, it's the same as traveling between the state. I mean, you fill out a piece of paper and you drive across the border. So it's only like people can still do it. It's just managed a little different there. But people have been abiding by the rules. So they've really just helped themselves. But I think it's definitely obviously yourself and me, we're both gym owners, and it's pretty frustrating to sit back and watch. I guess one of the big arguments, and I had it on social media as well, was hairdressers, right? They're touching people,
Yeah. Look, we could definitely get into semantics about all these things, but I think what happens is you do start to get into semantics, and at the end of the day, if this is what pays my super, how is it any more essential to me than it is to a doctor? Because it's paying for my super and my retirement, and it's paying off my house and everything else. So how is anybody's job more essential than the other? Like, that's horseshit right there. Because if we're going to do that, then we're really starting to say certain people are more important than other people. So I'd like to think on a value decision, it's probably unethical already. Now, if that's the case, then I really think our government needs to stop telling us what to do, and they should be preparing to protect people from the virus that's happening beyond social distancing and beyond shutting down businesses, because the economy is people's lives, especially for young people. And if you're super frightened, then get a job that keeps you indoors and away from people. That can be a personal choice for you. If you're not frightened and you want to play rugby league on the weekend, it should be your right to play rugby league on the weekend. Just like it's your right to smoke if you want to, or to eat donuts. You're not in charge of protecting me from all the viruses out there. It's like no one's protecting people from cancer or obesity or heart disease or liver disease, So we've already gone down a dangerous path of making it unethical. So I would rather not argue about those other things and argue that we can't keep classifying people as essential and non-essential, and we can't keep telling people what distance they can stand from other people. It's a little bit silly, isn't it?
Oh, I agree totally. I'm willing to grapple with anyone tomorrow. Yesterday, in fact. To me, I haven't personally known anyone who's got the virus at all. And so I'm not saying that it's a bloody hoax or anything. I'm just saying, personally, to me, no one has got it. So why can't I carry on with my life? Do you know what I mean? And then it's an individual's responsibility to go, I am sick, or I have got it, I'm going to stay away from there, and let people know they got it. But otherwise, I mean, it's been over 2 months, 2.5 months. It's kind of time for people to be allowed to make that decision, like you say, to get back to their life, to get back to some kind of normality.
Well, and here's an interesting problem, and because what happens is when you talk online and you have these ideas, someone always pipes up and says, "Oh, are you an epidemiologist now?" Now, the interesting thing is that community gave only two options to this. One was elimination, and one was immunity. Now, if you think of us as a worldwide entity rather than a country, elimination is out the door, not going to happen. So how long can Australia as a country stay separate from everyone else? We're going to have to do immunity like everyone else. So our government needs to pull their finger out, get the hospitals ready, get the grave sites ready, because at some point they're going to have to let travel and let people out. Now, that's a harsh reality for some people to attempt to accept. So if they're the only two options that epidemiologists gave you, and immunity for the world is definite, like, I mean, that ship sailed. Every country's fucking got it. Then we need to prepare to be the next America and the next Brazil. So, like, save the money somewhere and start building hospitals and start coming up with treatments, because we can only stay in Ireland for so long. And then we're going to have to let this thing out. So when they let this thing out, are they going to shut down all our businesses again? They're going to tell us how all to act? And are we all going to lick the government's boots and just do what we're told again? So that's definitely something that people need to think about. I think it's tough for the average person to think in a worldwide state. I think it's tough for the average person to even think beyond their own city and community. You can see that now, the way people talk to me when I'm in Townsville and we haven't had a case for 45 days and no one up here quarantined. You can see that, how people in New South Wales are like, open up the border to Queensland. And, I'm happy to do it, because I think that, that person with a tourism business on the Gold Coast or Sunshine Coast is just as important as me with my gym. So I think we probably should open the border, and, and obviously the government needs to be able to zone outbreaks. So if there's an outbreak on the Gold Coast over the holiday system, then everyone gets locked down. You get locked down, everybody gets sent home, borders get closed again, and we start the process again. But if that's just in the Gold Coast, then why can't Toowoomba run as normal? Why can't Rockhampton run as normal? Why can't Townsville run as normal? It's just to me it seems silly, but obviously it's a tough time, and I would just like us to have these conversations without people attacking the person, because they're worthy conversations to have. And for some reason, our society now, if somebody's opinion is different to you, you want to attack them and go, oh, you don't care about your grandmother. What if, who in your family are you going to pick to die? And it's kind of funny. It's like, well, I don't believe anyone in my family is going to die. So do I really have to pick someone to die?
Yeah. People have been saying some funny stuff. So yeah, people are they're really sensitive, overly sensitive. So if you had the decision now to what happens from tomorrow onwards, what do you think, whether it's essential, non-essential, gym owners or whatever, what do you think is the right course of action for us moving forwards? Like, gyms are going to open, no contact. I mean, that's for half people that's not even going to work. So what do you think moving forward is the answer?
Man, look, for me, I'm struggling with the whole new normal type of thing. Like, for me to want to hold like a thermometer at someone's head every time, when I'm like, honestly, like if I did an honest risk assessment myself, I'd say the chances of someone rocking up with COVID are very little. If someone rocks up with a runny nose or having coughing fits, they get sent home. They should probably get sent home before this happened. That should have been thinking, like, you're not going to roll with someone who's blowing their nose on the side of the mat, are you?
No.
You know. So I mean, we're already fairly conscious of those things as athletes, and it's like right now I can't clean my gym as well as I did before because ViraClean, the cleaner that I used, is the one that they're now only selling to health centers. So my center was cleaner and safer before this than I can possibly make it now. I was buying before hand sanitizer. So in my gym there was a hand sanitizer pump like every 3 meters. You'd only have to take 3 steps and you could sanitize your hands or wash your face if you like had some drool or something coming out of your face from rolling. Like I thought it was a good idea. I like to do it, like if I got a bit of snot in, so I was like, oh Ian, you got a dangleberry and you're rolling, I would like get some hand sanitizer and wipe it off. But that hand sanitizer that I used to buy for $6 is now $24. And I'm lucky to be able, like if I buy 5 or 6 things of that, I'm lucky to lay it out. So what I did is I bought 20 liters of isopropanol, like proof, and I made the WHO recommended sanitizer for this at about 90 proof. So I've got 20 liters of some stuff that I made myself. So, what else are you going to do beyond that? Like once we're already breathing in each other's face and touching each other, it's like the same as like, okay, you can't touch each other, but you can hit pads. So we're going to stand in front of each other, breathe heavy, hit pads, but that's somehow safer. Like it just seems rather arbitrary, and we're just people pleasing at this point in time rather than getting on with things. I would much rather see some kind of like rapid response team to outbreaks. So let's say someone in Townsville had an outbreak. Townsville had a rapid response team that would dive into contract trace and lock down businesses where they've been until they've been cleaned.
Yeah, I
don't know, something along those lines. I don't know. It all just sounds a little bit too difficult, and we should just be reacting to the numbers. At the moment, the numbers don't seem to mean anything to people anymore, and they're like, "Well, we'll get out of control real quick," and it's like from 7 people, it's going to turn into 1,000 within a week if we relax cities and towns. It's just not going to happen that way.
Oh no, I agree, and we've seen it in New South Wales. Like the gyms are going back on the 1st of June, and South Australia is the same. They just brought theirs forward by 2 weeks, so 1st of June seems to be, the time that the states that were hit the hardest are going back already.
Here's an interesting statistic for you as well. So, Queensland has roughly the same population as New Zealand.
Yeah.
But we're spread out over 6,000 kilometres. You could fit 20 New Zealands into Queensland. And now in New Zealand, you can roll and train and do all those other things. But they have just as many active cases as us, I think.
Yeah, well, and they're allowed back to the gym, but I think they've got some restrictions on numbers, but they're allowed back to do contact and stuff. So, but, and professional athletes are allowed to train again. But because individual athletes aren't financed like big corporations like the NRL and that, we can't do the right biosecurity, measures that the government said you have to go by because you can't afford to do it. So some professional athletes are allowed to go back to training based on that alone. So that's difficult as well. But anyway, that's enough about coronavirus. I think that it's quite frustrating for everyone to kind of sit around. And it's pretty obvious that it's very controlling, and that any kind of decision making is probably not. It's not, to me, it's not really in the best interest of the people, but there's probably something else there. But as far as I wanted to ask you, as far as being a coach to athletes, so obviously as a coach to me back in the day, and still someone who I ring and get advice off, you hold people pretty heavily accountable for their actions as a coach. And I find that a lot of times, especially on the regional circuit, that athletes, whether it's missing weight or whether it's being out of shape or whatever it is, I find like as a coach myself, I'm like every week, like, how's your weight? Where's this at? Have you done this? Have you done that? Not micromanaging, but I'm always on my guys, like holding them accountable and making sure they're doing the right things. And you do the same thing. How important do you think that is as a coach? I think a lot of coaches tend to think of themselves as needing to teach the technique and stuff, but when guys want to fight, they'll get them a fight, but it's up to them to worry about their weight cut. How much of that part of it do you think is important as a coach?
I think it probably weighs more on the pie of importance than the actual technique itself. I mean, that might be controversial to some people, but like if I told you could learn how to throw a straight right cross online, well, you couldn't disagree with me now, could you? You know, could you learn to throw a good straight right cross online? You probably find a couple of world champions willing to teach you to throw a cross well online with all the details and everything involved. So what separates then the champions or the winners from the losers? And often it's got to do with attitude, strategy, and willingness, all those things. And I think if you can take the martial arts or whatever it is that you're teaching people and add that, you can not only you might make champions, but you might change a whole heap of people's lives in the process. And you don't change people's lives by taking a drop kick and let him act like a drop kick and he beats up a few people and then you never made him accountable. So now you've just got a drop kick who's good at martial arts and you thought you were going to change his life. No, you're going to change his life by changing his belief systems and his attitude towards those things. You know, like I probably seriously never, I probably shouldn't have ever won any of my fights. I don't remember a single fight where I wasn't out experienced, outmatched, or out coached. You know, so you know what was the reason that I ever won any fights? And I would say that that attitude had a lot to do with it. So that's, I think I call it the pie of importance. This could be a trademark. So, you know, like if you were to draw up a pie chart, just a simple pie chart, and you were to say, I would say to you, okay, this pie chart represents winning. And you're going to say, okay, well, my skills training is this much of the pie chart. My conditioning training is this much of the pie chart. My nutrition is this much of the pie chart. And my attitude is this much of the pie chart. Most people, or at least most successful people, are gonna draw fairly similar pie charts, I think, and they might be a little bit different athlete to athlete, but we've got to stop thinking that like there's a magic food that you can eat before you fight. Man, you should be able to not eat for 3 days and rock up and fight for 15 minutes like you're fighting for your life or you're fighting for your food and do all right. You know, and some fighters do that to make weight. But, you know, that pie chart of importance is probably a really good activity for even someone having their first fight or their last fight, or coaches thinking about talking to their athletes or people who want to fight. Okay, well, you know, because someone will come to you really worried and anxious about their food, and you're like, man, look, in the pie of importance, your calories are important, but you know, like for winning this fight, you need to be on weight. So it's important that you need to be on weight, but you know, you need to do all the other things right first.
Yeah, I agree.
So yeah, it's definitely something worth talking about. But it's not like we don't do technical training. That's the fun part of training, learning how to do things, footwork, all that thing. That's the fun part of training. You know, like you'll get that stuff in time, and that's always training a little bit too. You know, we should always be evolving and changing that stuff. But that attitude thing, I mean, that's timeless. You know, building that into your coaching system or the culture in your center, you know, like how are you going to make people committed if you don't tell them that they have to turn up to sparring every day? How do you make someone committed if you don't set a baseline for training sessions that they have to make, or you're going to pull them out of the fight. How do you make someone committed if when you weighs in 1 week he's one kilo down, and then he goes out with the boys and he's 3 kilos over, and you accept that as okay? You know, you do that 2 weeks in a row and you don't get back to the weight. I call the promoter. I pull you from the fight.
Yeah, well, I mean that happened to one of our guys recently, and it's not as in my guy, but one guy accepted the fight, and then on the Monday, that was on a Friday, and on the Monday he's like, "I had a big weekend. I'm not going to make weight." I'm like, "You just accepted a fight like 3 days ago. How's that shit happen?" But anyway, that's why we're talking about it. So yeah, that's my belief is that it's not just about the technique and the training, but it's about the entire pie chart, as you put it. The whole pie chart is the responsibility of the coach to oversee.
If you want to be considered a martial artist and not a fighter too, you know, like if you want to, especially you start going down like the Japanese path of Budo or wherever, how you do one thing might be how you do other things. And I think that's one of the reasons I have a successful club, and I've been I've got a much better fight record as a coach than I did as a fighter, because I took those lessons from fighting and put them into business and coaching as well. You know, like I don't want to be average at anything, you know.
No, well, you're certainly doing a good job up there in Townsville. So, look, man, we might cut it off there, call it a day. But I want to thank you for coming on the podcast and for giving us the time. And obviously, it's not a good time for anyone that's a gym owner, so it's quite stressful. So thanks for chatting to us about that sort of stuff as well. And we are wishing you well as us down here in Brisbane.
Anytime, brother. And I'll get you to
for
repay the favor too. We'll have another chat again soon. We might make mine more interesting and drink whiskey at the same time or something.
Ooh, sounds good. Thanks for that, man. Have a good day.
Pleasure, mate. See you, brother.